Two humorous nurses would like to acknowledge the true custodians of the land in which we record our podcast, the Yorta Yorta people.
We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders listening today. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land.
Two humorous nurses with Kelly and Alicia.
The podcast that lives vicariously through its guests.
Welcome to Two Humorous Nurses, where we plan to bring you funny, informal, conversational chat about all things nursing.
This episode, our guest is an ICU clinical nurse specialist and has created a Spotify playlist for compressions called You Can't Hurry Rosk.
That is the
made me
funniest
laugh
thing I've ever
so
heard.
hard.
Do you know, then I started singing that song, You Can't Hurry Rosk, no, you just have to wait.
You probably should hurry it though. But anyway, she's a lover of yoga, cats and cocktails, and has a way with words that we all strive for. Welcome, Georgie.
Hi, thank you. Woo-hoo. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to sit down and chat with you. I've been listening to your podcast in the lead up to recording with you, and I honestly feel like I'm just sat around a table with mates. Like you guys are in the kitchen with me cooking and doing my laundry.
Yeah.
Such a pleasure. So I'm so excited to be able to be here.
Oh, I love that. It's so nice having you. We first, I guess, found out about you, I suppose, at the Victorian Nurses Luncheon. And we're like, who is this fabulous bitch? We need her on our podcast. And you just spoke so well. You just spoke so beautifully. And I think we must have talked about you half the way home, like just saying how wonderful it was. But then Kelly obviously went and stalked your Instagram all the way back to 2019 and saw that you went to India for a month to teach yoga. Like I've been doing yoga for 5 years and I still can't touch my toes. So I don't maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe we have to have like a one-on-one or something. But before we pick your brain about nursing, can you tell us how you got involved in that?
Yeah, so I've been to India twice actually for yoga. The first time I went was 2018, and then I went the following year in 2019. So I went to go to like a yoga school to learn how to become a yoga teacher. Right. It's two friends of mine that I would say are mentors, and they run a yoga school. They're a Melbourne-based company, and they take you to India to learn how to be a yoga teacher. And so, awesome. Yeah, I went in 2018 and I spent 6 weeks studying yoga and doing some travel. And then at the end of my teacher training, they invited me back the next year to go and facilitate like the next year's training.
That sounds so fun.
Yeah, it was so amazing. India holds such a special place in my heart. It's a place that like I've done a bit of travel, and that's one place that I know I will always go back to. Like it's never a place that I'm like, I've done India and what's next? It's
I love that.
Yeah. It was great.
My grandmother, she did a lot of travel, and she went to India with a couple of her friends, like on this senior citizens tour thing. It's like Kentucky, but for older people. And she said when she came home that it was really a life-changing experience for her, even as like an older person. She said that it was a place that was full of surprises, and she loved every minute of it, and would have loved to have been able to do it without the constraints of the tour with her. So, yeah, she said to me, if you go anywhere, you need to go to India. And I've never been, obviously. So, yeah.
It's my dream to be a yoga teacher, right? Like I've always thought, how amazing would it be? And I always thought I'd do like yoga for the unflexible people. Like I really want everyone to be welcome at my yoga studio where like we have 6 rolls and we can't point our toes, and like I feel like we just make that the norm. Like
I love that. And like yeah, I mean I think a lot of people think yoga is for, the people that are fit and, already flexible, but ideally, you go to yoga to learn how to become flexible amidst many other things. Like healthy people don't go to hospital and become unhealthy and then are like, hey, I need your care. They come when they're already like, you go to the service just as yourself, and you get out of it what you need. So
I will say the first time I ever did downward dog and the instructor's going, okay, just relax into it. I'm like, there is no fucking part of this that's relaxing. and now I can do down dog for like 5 minutes and I just love it. It's like the best feeling in the world, even though my knees are still bent.
Oh, they tell you it's like the safe pose. It's like that's your resting pose, and you're like, this is not a resting pose.
Ain't rest.
I do not feel safe in here.
But no,
that's funny.
I'm a big fan of yoga. But anyway, the real reason we're here, talk us through your nursing journey up until working in ICU, please.
Ooh, okay. All right. So I studied at university, obviously. Oh my God. Believe it or not.
I was born. Yeah.
I didn't train in the hospital. No. I did a double degree. I did a Bachelor of Nursing and a Bachelor of Emergency Health. So 4 years of study. And when I graduated as both a nurse and a paramedic.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I've never used the paramedic side in terms of employment. So I've never been employed and worked as a paramedic, but it's definitely informed my practice. And you know, it was a huge role, especially when I was a grad and like a more junior nurse. It really informed a lot of the start of my career. So I still like to think that I've used it aside from actually being an AMBO, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I did my grad year as a nurse. I worked in like a major tertiary hospital in Melbourne City.
What year was that?
Trauma. 2016. So this will be my 7th year as a nurse this year. But yeah, I did my grad year. I worked on a trauma and plastics ward and a respiratory gen med ward. I was there for a couple of years and then decided that I hate living in the city. So I left and I moved back home to where I grew up, which is by the beach down on the Mornington Peninsula. And I got a job at like the local, it's like a medium-sized metro hospital down my way. And I worked on a renal and respiratory ward for a few years before I made the transition to ICU.
Wowzers.
How did you find the transition into ICU? Like, did you do any extra training?
Not extra training, so to speak, but I think like I've always known that I wanted to get into ICU, like get my foot in the door. And I guess like deep down, I've always known that I wanted to like go back to uni and study and specialize. And so I think I've always just pushed and excelled myself to get my hands on and do as much as I can to, I guess, collect skills and knowledge along the way that will just be boosters like on my resume or like feathers in my hat, so to speak. To get me to where I wanted to be. The actual literal like transition into ICU was a really funny like coincidental story. I don't know if you guys believe in like manifesting or like
100%. Yeah, we definitely do. I'm surrounded by oracle cards and sage and
it's amazing. No, but like so when I decided I wanted to go to ICU, I literally just started sending like the manager my resume and I was like, hey, I want to work with you. Like, let me in. And they were like, oh, we're not hiring, but thank you. And then I sent them my resume again and I was like, hey, I want to work in ICU. Like, please hire me. And they were like, oh, we're still not hiring. But thanks. And I started to like ask people that I knew already worked there. I spoke to a few contacts that I knew were already there and a few of the liaison nurses that roam the hospitals and go to Met calls and stuff. And I was like, can you drop my name? You know, can you speak, about me? Which is really rare for me because I never usually like involve other people in my plans. I'm usually very like private and very like, I'll keep this to myself until I've actually achieved it. But I just started asking people. I was like, throw my name in the hat or whatever it is. And then one day I picked up just a random extra shift on my respiratory renal ward. And I happened to just walk past one of the liaison nurses and they were like, oh, why didn't you apply for the postgraduate position in ICU? And I was like, oh, I didn't think I could apply for that because I'm not an ICU nurse. I didn't think they took like external applicants. And she was like, oh, well, we were all surprised we didn't see your name there. And it turns out it was a big misunderstanding. I didn't think that I could apply if I wasn't already in ICU.
Yeah.
And so we made some phone calls and they decided to accept my application a little bit late. They were like, oh, applications are closing, but if you get it to us tomorrow, we'll consider it. Wow. And then they offered me an interview and then I was successful and they gave me the place. So I got into ICU anyway.
Oh, wow, that is awesome.
Not just as a regular nurse, but under the pretense of going to university and becoming a postgraduate student. But yeah, it was if I hadn't have picked up that shift, if I hadn't have walked past the liaison, I think if I hadn't have involved other people and all of that, I think the opportunity would have been missed by a year. Short of me, not picking up that one random little shift on my respiratory ward. So, it's definitely I'm meant to be there, which is very exciting for me to think about.
If you're anything I don't know, I feel like this might just be a country thing, but it's it's who you know. If you want a job somewhere and you know someone in the know, that's how you'll get it. Often it is based on your credentials, but also it will be what do you think of that Georgie? Do you know that Georgie? How do you think should fit in here with the team? It's a lot of that. And it's based on your skills, but then also how, if people know you and they know that you're a good person and that you're good value or whatever, then you're way more likely to get in.
Exactly. And interestingly, the impression I got when I first moved to ICU then was that my reputation preceded me, because when I got there, people were like, oh, you're the yoga girl. And I remember one time I was really stressed. I literally said to the ANUM, I was like, I'm feeling really overwhelmed and stressed. And she was like, aren't you meant to be really calm? And I was like, no, I do yoga because I'm not calm.
Yes, exactly.
I just walk in to see you doing some downward dog pose next to the bed. You're like, I'm trying to get calm.
Can I tell you something?
Meditating all my patients ripping out their ET tube.
Yeah.
Right, this is a too much information warning, but I feel like it's relevant, so I'm going to share it. When I work nights, I get really bad wind pain for some reason, and I have to go into a spare room and go into down dog and get it all flowing. And no joke, the staff that I work with, they'll be like, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I've just got a bit of wind pain. Righto. And then now they all know that I've just gone off to do a bit of yoga to get the wind away.
Oh my God.
Yep.
You know it. Though.
What's that?
I'm so adverse to do you put your hands on the floor?
Oh, I was thinking that same thing. That's disgusting.
I don't care. I just wash my hands after it.
It's floor is lava, but for the hands. I do not want to touch.
It's when patients bring their kids in and their kids are crawling all over the floor. I'm like, mate, that's carpeted and I know what's been on that.
It's not I'm judging off it. It's not it's
would
when
you eat off it, Alicia?
No, I wouldn't, because it's when you're in the tea room at work and you drop your food on the floor and then you're like, well, there goes that. I ain't eating that.
No. Yeah.
You know where everyone's shoes have been. People need to wear those blue booties in the staff room. That'd be far more hygienic.
It would be.
But you still, I don't reckon. You're still walking it over everything.
No. You put them on as you go into the staff room.
Yeah, but I wouldn't if I was just ducking in there. So you still have those people. So the reason we got you on the podcast isn't really to talk about ICU, surprisingly, but to talk about your love of language in nursing. At the nurses' luncheon that we went to, that is what captured our attention, was the way you spoke about the use of language in nursing, and it got us thinking that what that means and how that should be incorporated more into our daily nursing lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's something that I think I've always been interested in, or it's something that's always captured my attention, but only more recently, as I've taken on sort of more senior roles within where I work, that it's become more and more apparent, because you're communicating with so many more people about so many more things, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's nothing that I'm an expert in. I think I just have a keen interest for it. I think it stems from me, like I'm a very literal person. Like I can be quite black and white in a lot of circumstances. And
isn't that just
I guess
ICU nurses in general?
probably. I always say ICU is a great place for like my OCD to hide. Like it's passed off as normal, which is great. It's yeah, and like I know like I've always noticed that I can sometimes struggle to understand what people are saying unless they're being very like explicit and very specific about what they're saying. And so like when I reflect on conversations that I've had or, you know, situations I've been in, like that has always played on my mind. And I'm also very like just reflective in general. And so I'll play over conversations or situations and, you know, think about, you know, how it made me feel and what I said and how I could have said it better or how I made this person feel, all of those things. And then like layer on top, I'm just like an anxious overthinker at the best of times. All of that, like I've thought about all the possible outcomes 3 months ago. You know?
I feel like you are saying everything that I feel. Like I'm constantly reflecting on situations and conversations and you know, thinking about like how could I have worded that to you know, achieve my goal and things like that. Like I feel everything you are saying right now.
Yeah, exactly. But and so like just me in those situations and me thinking about it myself and being like, oh, I wish that person spoke to me differently, or like if they'd have said this, I think I would have responded different or better, or like that, you know. And I often think, especially like in healthcare, like the stakes are really high. You know, there's lives on our hands or at risk. And there's also, you know, in terms of medicine and the industry that we work in, there's a lot of intellect and potentially also a lot of ego flying around. And so the way that we communicate with each other, you know, even if we're trying to achieve the same thing and we're both, you know, trying to head in the same direction, we can come from very different, I don't know if agenda is the right word, or very different approaches or pathways. But you might not see eye to eye, you know, but you're both trying to achieve the same thing. So I think about that a lot. And then I think about how I can represent myself and be like the better leader to show it to other people. So within me and the way that I interact with people and then encourage them in their practice as well, is sort of where that's all stemmed from.
I love that, you know, training on, it was called Crucial Conversations. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. And it was like, you know, when the stakes are high and how to have those important or difficult conversations. But sometimes I think, you know, there's a way of being conscious about what you say for sure. But then when you've been given like an algorithm or when you've been given, I guess, a template of what to say, sometimes those conversations can feel really, what's the word? Like synthetic. Like they seem to be kind of mechanical rather than like coming from a good place of emotion. Like sometimes then you're having a conversation with that person who might be like giving you the script from the Crucial Conversations training and you're like, I know what you're trying to do to me. Like, I know that you're trying to have a crucial conversation with me. Like, and sometimes it has the opposite effect because you start getting defensive. I think, you know, thinking about that, you know, knowing that you're coming from two different places, I think that's so important. You know, achieving the same goal ultimately.
And even within that, like just trying to understand like the intricacies, of language and, you know, the way you might just like share education with a colleague, or you just talking in general to your patient, or communicating with a family member, or disagreeing and advocating with, you know, a senior medical staff, all of those things. Like it's all the way you communicate and use language, and it has the power to influence the outcome of what you're trying to achieve, and the way you deliver it can, you know, really take you on multiple different trajectories, I guess, in the way you choose to use whatever words and the way you deliver it, you know, all of those things. And at risk of sounding disingenuous by using like a sort of a structured approach from like this course that you've done, like I think that can empower you with great language and sort of words to use, but you'd never want to come across like as if you're reading from a script, because that just doesn't work in our industry, does it? We know every interaction is very unique,
and people aren't stupid. They can tell when you're trying to have a crucial conversation. Like,
in summary, people aren't stupid.
No,
yeah. Even if you think they are. Yeah. I think as a leader and a manager, I know, I've had to step into the management role, especially this year, and I've not had to manage staff that I didn't know or I hadn't worked with, and I'm just stepping into this role now with a new team in the next month or so, and I'm really conscious about the way that I am going to train them in the unit, and the way I talk about learning. Like, I was talking to a new grad that we had in, and she's only done aged care placement and district nursing. She hasn't done acute care yet. So coming into oncology is going to be as acute as she's gotten to yet. And at the end of the day, she looked at me and she just said, "Can I ask what your expectation is of when I might achieve all these things that you said that I'll do in here?" And I was like, "Oh, how long are you here for?" And she's like, "For 3 months." And I was like, "Oh, just sometime over then." And she's like, "Oh, I got the feeling you wanted me to cannulate 4 people by the end of next week." And I was like, "Oh my God, no." But obviously the way I was explaining it to her was like, we'll have all these patients, you can cannulate them. And she's like literally never stuck a cannula anywhere near a person. She's probably never picked one up. Aww. And she had obviously stewed over it for the day and then had just said, yeah. And I just thought, oh, I did not communicate like the fact that it was going to take time and we will teach you. And I do not expect you to jump in on day one and stick a needle in somebody's arm. So I thought, that just really hit it home to me. Yeah, I know. I was like just telling her all the magical things she could do in oncology. She's sitting there thinking, holy shit, like next week I'm going to cannulate 10 people and put ports in. And I'm like, oh, it's all right.
How good that she was able to like come back to you.
Yeah.
I like what, if that's what, like in terms of saying, can I ask what your expectations are? Like what a great way.
Yep.
Her either ignoring it completely and going home and being like, oh my God, I have to cannulate 4 people next week.
I know.
Like, she's almost like seeking a summary or clarification and confirming it with you to be just like, okay, so just so we're clear, here's the plan. And you're like, oh yeah, duh. Like, but without realizing.
Let's run through a couple of scenarios and we'll have a chat about like maybe the best way to try and communicate them. I'm feeling like the people that listen to us have either been in similar situations. I mean, someone even put on their stories today about, how to not get upset when someone tells you basically just to bugger off in a situation where you've asked to stay. And I was like, oh, you poor love. Please don't take that personally. It's clearly just a shit nurse or a shit day for that nurse. Like, yeah. So probably like the first one, if like your frustrations on a shift with a patient or even a colleague or a manager, like how can we handle those like frustrating conversations to have with people? I have them every day with my daughter and I don't know what to do.
See, like your daughter is not your colleague, so there's an extra complexity there, which makes it. I do not envy you. treat her like a little minion. Like treat her like one of your staff.
Mate, if one of my staff spoke to me like she did, they'd be sacked and out of here.
You can't ground your staff, can you? So
no. Take their iPads away.
I would take away your computer on wheels and you're gonna have to put on paper.
Yeah. Pick that pen up. Yeah.
No, I mean, obviously I'm no expert and all of this just comes from my own experience in like sort of like, and I'm always testing things out as well. And that's where sort of a lot of my reflection comes from as well, being like, I didn't feel good after that interaction, or like, I don't feel good about this, or that went really well. But I'm always just trying things out on myself and other people. It's like a live experiment. Don't know about the ethics. But what I think is really important in all sort of conversations like that in general is just to name what's going on first. So if it was like frustration or conflict, to sort of recognize and literally just to be very upfront and very honest, and so to label it or name it. So it's very clear what you're talking about. There's no like beating around the bush where there can be confusion, which is really good for my brain, because if you're not being explicit, I don't understand what you're talking about. But, if I was frustrated, especially with a colleague, or a patient or something, I'd say something along the lines of like, this seems really important to the both of us, but perhaps we're not seeing eye to eye. And then I would always try and seek clarification. I'd say like, can you explain this in a different way so that I can better understand where you're coming from? And then I'll do the same. And so I'm setting an expectation that they will try and rephrase what they're trying to get across, but then they'll also listen to me and give me the space to talk about what I want to talk about too. And then I would try and summarize what they have said. So I'd sort of, I guess, repeat or mirror back to them what I've understood. And if you're still not seeing eye to eye, then, I would sort of, I'd almost want to, I'd sort of, I guess I'd confirm and I'd be like, I can hear what you're saying. Like, it still seems like we're not heading in the right direction. Like, how about we get another opinion on this? How about I call in this person, or like, I'm going to call on this person to give us some advice. I think a third party is really important, especially if it's like conflict or potential conflict with anybody, to have another person there to almost be like a neutralizer or a mediator for both parties can be really important too.
Unless it's your mate, and then they'll be like, nah, bitch, you're wrong.
And therein like that's such a complexity as well. Like you were in a professional situation, and sure, like we form such great bonds, and we've got our work lives and our friends and all of that. But like, imagine if it was your friend that you had to call out because you feel like they're not pulling their weight or something like that. Like,
I do that to Kelly all the time.
It's funny, when I stepped into like an after hours manager role on Facebook, I unfriended quite a few people that I didn't like, work colleagues that I didn't actually socialize with outside of work, or who I didn't deem to be my friend, that we were just friends on Facebook because of work, because I felt like I'd stepped into a management role and therefore I needed to maintain some kind of, because no matter how close I am to my manager, I'm never going to add them on Facebook.
Yeah.
So I felt like I needed to create those boundaries for those work friendships. And in the country like where I work, all my friends outside of work are my work colleagues. I mean, I don't work with any of them now because I'm in oncology, but, that's how it starts. And so then it does get a bit tricky when you're their manager on the ward as well, because people are like, oh, you're favouring them or whatever. And you're like, well, I'm not. They're just not shit nurses. So, like, step your game up. But obviously that's not how you handle that situation either. So,
while we're on the topic of boundaries with work colleagues and patients, Georgie, can you help us navigate the conversations around those?
I think, again, I would be really explicit in naming it. Like to say something to someone's face, it can be really powerful. It can be really uncomfortable, and especially if people aren't used to being challenged, or literally just to have the truth spoken to them in that sense. So again, I'd name it. I love the use of silence. I wouldn't just be like, boundaries and then be silent. But like the use of silence. Silence is also so important. In terms of like, so yeah, I would explain, like, list what's happened or describe the situation that's happened and, what's resulted from it, similar to like acknowledging, that this was really good, so well done, or, I didn't like this, I would sort of, label what's gone on, explain how it makes me feel, or, how it affects me. And then again, communicate my desires, like, this is what I would prefer. And then I would confirm that they've understood, sort of re-establish what I've tried to say. And then I would probably just be silent. And, same with interview techniques. When you interview and they are quiet and you just keep talking shit. Like, and it's
until they stop writing. Yeah.
It's a really powerful way to sort of let them like understand like where you've come from, I guess.
Do you know, when I was pregnant, like towards the end of your, like when, I don't know if you've ever been pregnant, but when you get pregnant, everybody thinks that they have this right to tell you about your appearance. Like, people just feel compelled to tell you that you either look big, small, carrying, high, low, you look pale, you look tired, you look fucked, basically, that pregnancy's fucked you. And towards the end of my pregnancy, someone came up to me and she was like, oh, how far along are you now? And I said, oh, yeah, 35 weeks or whatever. And she went, 35? Jesus, you look like you could pop tomorrow. It's going to be a big baby. And I just looked at her and I just blinked. Like, I said nothing. And she could not believe that I didn't say anything back. I just stood there and looked at her. And I'm like, and I think in the end she just kind of walked away because she got so uncomfortable that I hadn't responded. And I'm like, and then another person actually like said a similar thing to me, like I had back pain. And she was like, well, it's only going to get worse. And I just looked at her and I thought, if I don't say anything, what's she going to do? And then she was like, sorry to say it, but it will. And I just said, I was like, how do you think that makes me feel when you say that? And I was like, by the end of my pregnancy, I was fucking done with people criticizing the way I looked and telling, they give you all the bad advice. Like they give you all the shit that you don't want to hear. And in the end, I was like, I was done. I was either just giving people absolute hell for what they just said to me, or I would say nothing. And it was really interesting. I love what you said about live experiment, because you're like, if I do nothing, what are they going to do? Like, how are they going to react if I say nothing?
Yeah, they'll try and like joke or laugh their way out of it, or like make an excuse or like sort of fumble.
Yeah.
You just look at them, like you don't have to be like rude and tapping your foot or whatever, but if you just look at them and like almost as if you just expect them to keep going, and eventually they'll be like, oh, and and then that's where I jump in and I'd be like, so for example, like my surname gets laughed at a lot in healthcare. I think in the UK it means like disgusting or like feral. So I love that for me.
I use the word Mankey all the time about a word, and I never put that to your name.
Well,
I'm glad.
Never put. Well, now I will.
Like the polar opposite of everything that's disgusting. Like you're fabulous.
Yeah, but it gets laughed at a lot. And so I was to use that as like an example, in terms of setting boundaries, like I would sort of turn to someone and I'd be like, hey, like when you laugh at my surname every time I have to like sign my signature, it makes me feel really uncomfortable and upset. So I've labeled what they're doing and the way it makes me feel. Mm-hmm. And then I would say like, I'd like it to stop. And then they would probably like make an excuse or laugh or like try and back away as I'm staring at and then I would say, I'd sort of reiterate and I'd be like, okay, so like no more joking about my surname. Okay. Like, is that clear? And then, I'd be quiet again and I'd sort of just watch them. Like,
I love that.
Yeah. I think that, does that make sense to sort of label it, to say how it makes what your preferences are, give them space to sort of respond and then like reaffirm.
And I feel like you establish yourself as someone in that way who's like, don't fuck with me, then people won't fuck with you. Like I feel like
you would have scared the shit out of those people, Alicia, that you just stared at and not said anything, because Alicia doesn't not say anything. So if she just stares at you and says nothing, I would have shit my pants and walked away and been like, I am in so much trouble, because Alicia will like she's verbal. So
I have to say one more thing. When you talk about language and it being a live like experiment, when I was a grad, I realized that the nurse in charges do the allocations in the morning in theatre, right? And they put you in the theatre that like they choose the teams and put you in whichever theatre that they want to put you in, basically. And the people they didn't like, they didn't give a fuck about. So they would just put them wherever. So I decided I was going to start giving them all compliments. So when I'd come in the morning, I'd be like, oh, Jen, your hair looks so good today. Oh, have you done something? Oh, your skin looks so good. Blah, blah, blah. And literally I started getting the best fucking allocations. I was like in ortho. I was like in, doing big surgeries and like working with the best anesthetic teams. And I'm like, people are fucking dumb. Sorry, we said before that people aren't that stupid, but some of them are, because I didn't like any of them. And I was like, if I walk in and give you one compliment, you think I'm your best friend and you're going to give me good allocations. So, done.
It's like when I call a doctor. It's like I'm always like, yeah, you catch more flies with honey. And that saying is so true. Like, I will butter a doctor up to get what I want. And just be like, you're such a legend. Thank you so much, knowing that I'm going to have to ring him in 30 minutes anyway, if you had just done it in the first place. Yeah, but like, I'll just be the nicest person. No, I know you won't. And that's
I'm
why
like,
they
do
don't
your
like
fucking
you.
job. Do the bare minimum. Do your
I
fucking job.
Yes. Or like, you know, when you're suggesting something to like the medical team and you're like, oh, I really think my patient needs this. I think they need this. Like, can you come and review? I think they need this. And you just get ignored. And then like 2 hours later, they turn around and they're like, let's do this. And you're like, that was my fucking idea.
Like,
So,
wow.
who would have thought? I
Yeah.
always like try and flip it around and I try and put the idea in their mind. And I'm like, how can I phrase this to make them think like it's their idea? And
Yes,
then
that is
they'll be like,
exactly right. And that's the same as us. There's one doctor
Yeah.
who will never, ever do it if it's a nurse's suggestion. But if you write, like, you may not write the diagnosis or what you think should happen. You just tell them all of your findings and then he'll do exactly what you want him to do anyway.
Yeah.
Nurses, we're smart.
Let's fling it around from like the negative talk and talk about how we can acknowledge people who do good work, because as managers, like I remember someone telling me once, you need to stop telling people that they're doing things bad and catch them when they're doing things good and reinforce that, because positive reinforcement, as we know, makes the world a better place. So how can we do that in a way that's not like, oh, thanks everyone for today, this was great, when really like, just get the fuck out of here. You know, it's not sincere. Like, you want to be sincere in these acknowledgements, I guess.
Yeah, it's those little moments. And I agree with the positive reinforcement, because when you're feeling, if it's a negative situation or you're feeling under threat or you're under pressure or it's like an environment that's not conducive to you feeling good, you're not going to learn. Like, your walls are going to go up. And it's like that what you're trying to like get across is never going to happen. So that positivity and, you know, creating like an environment where you all boost each other up is really important. But we don't do it that often, do we? We usually, I think, and in general, I think people are more likely to complain or spread the negative word than they are to be like, actually, they did something really good today. But again, I think it's just like calling out those little situations. That to me, I think, has a lot to do with standards. So calling out things like that you don't agree with, that you don't like just, again, naming it. Hey, when you do this, I don't like it. Like, let's not do that, please. It makes me feel uncomfortable. But doing the same thing in the reverse, like, you know, when you did XYZ today, it made me feel really supported. So I just wanted to say thank you. Or, you know, I saw the way that you did this for your patient and, you know, I can tell that the patient and the family are so thankful. So, you know, good job. Or not even to follow it up with like those positive words. Well done.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I remember I gave feedback to a doctor once and I was like, hey, you know, I watched and listened to the way that you mentored that junior doctor in inserting their first arterial line. And I really liked the way that you were really supportive and encouraging and like you seemed really gentle and kind. And I just wanted to recognize that. And they looked at me and they were like, but? And they were expecting me to, they genuinely thought I was going to turn around and be like, but like this was fucked and this was shit and da 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 da. Like,
but it fell out straight away.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, no, but I was like, I just wanted to let you know. I think that was really nice to watch. And, you know, I just wanted you to know that. And they were like, I feel uncomfortable now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And they felt uncomfortable because I just gave them positive feedback without any like caveat. Like it wasn't a shit sandwich. I was just like, that was really good. But yeah, the fact that they expected me to like follow it up with like something crappy was quite interesting to me.
I have a nurse that was she was a grad last year, and then this year she's been doing some oncology training, and she was in with the new grad last week, the one that I terrified on the first day, and then on her second day half the patients cancelled, so we didn't have a lot on, and it was a really good opportunity for like Ella to teach her everything. And I, she, you know, at one point she said to me, because I'm busy doing paperwork, so I just like left them to it. And she's like, oh, we're just going to go down and get chest to chest so I can show her how to do a pick dressing. And then when they brought it back, she actually talked her through doing a pick dressing. So the grad did the pick dressing on chest to chest. And I was like listening to her, and I was so proud because she was doing it the way I told her how to do it. So I was like, yes, you're using all my terms. And I said to her on the Thursday, I was like, it was really good that you used your initiative to go and get Chester and use that downtime to learn and teach the grad, like, you know, well done. and that I'd actually had a phone call from a patient on the Wednesday who wanted to ring. He was 90 something, and he wanted to ring and thank the two girls that did his like iron infusion, because he's feeling so much better today, and they were so good to me, and I'm 90 and not everyone's nice to me. And I was like, that's basically a grad and a second year nurse who I'd left on their own to do it. And like, I just emailed them straight away and was like, you just got the most amazing feedback and like, well done, basically. And I just, I thought it's so nice that when you teach people well, you know, that flows on to the way they want to teach people. Now, I didn't tell Ella that she had to teach the grad how to do anything, but Ella just used her initiative and got on and did it. And I'm very sad if she's listening that she won't get a job with me. So she doesn't want one. I was like, come back, Ella.
Like what you said, how, you know, you taught her how to do this dressing, and then you listened and you heard her using similar phrases, sort of spoke the way you spoke. And like, again, that's like such an important way in terms of language, that you've empowered her with even just the right words as well as the practical skill, but the words and like the sentences that she can use, it makes sense to her, and then she's using it for others. If you'd have been like, hey, you just whack it on and slap it there and, you know, yeah, it looks all right, you know.
Surprising, because that's how I joke. I am like, just put the thingy on the thingy bob. But clearly I do use or either that or Sarah taught her how to do it. I don't know.
Nurses are going through a really difficult time right now, and we get that finding time to go to therapy while working shift work can be even harder. This is why we're sponsored by BetterHelp.
BetterHelp has customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. You can use BetterHelp at a time that suits you, in a format that works for you and that fits in with your schedule. There's a huge range of expertise in BetterHelp's 20,000 plus therapists network, so help is accessible to you no matter where you are.
You just fill out the questionnaire to help assess your specific needs, and then you get matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. Then you can schedule secure video and phone sessions, plus you can exchange unlimited messages, and everything you share is completely confidential. You can request a new therapist at no additional charge at any time.
Join the 2 million people who've taken care of their mental health with BetterHelp. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/2HN. That's betterhelp.com/2HN. That's the number 2HN.
Georgie, I feel like we could all night about this.
Yeah.
But I feel like before we wrap up, you have to tell us about the debrief project.
Yeah, with the other George, G squared.
The other G, I know. It's our little baby, our little child. It's very exciting. The debrief was an idea that came to me last year, I think early last year. And it stems a lot from like what we've just been discussing in terms of language and communication, conversation, and how to have better conversations within our industry, to make people feel empowered and safe, and you know, to break down walls, and, you know, all of those more subtle things that you don't necessarily learn in nursing school, but you learn through experience. And so this idea sort of came to me, and I've known Georgia through social media, through like fitness influencing in the past. And so I messaged her. I've been watching her with her nurse Sibs, and I messaged her and I was like, I've got an idea to pitch to you. And we met, I pitched her this idea, and like from the very first meeting, she was like, I'm 100% in, like, let's do this, full steam ahead. And so, yeah, we've created our little platform. We are formally a partnership. So we are called By the Debrief, or we call it the Debrief for short. And you can see us on Instagram, but it's so much more than like what we have let on thus far, I guess. Like at the moment, we're in that sort of cultivating phase of generating like interaction and excitement and cultivating community. But there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that we're so excited to be able to bring out. It's all like, I guess, within this realm of a lot of what we've been speaking about through this recording. I think it's it's a gap that I've definitely noticed. And so, yeah, we're really excited to fill it with what we've got planned.
Well, now I'm excited for the big reveal. Can you tell us when are you going to sort of give us a bit more, I guess?
Or special teaser on the podcast. We're hoping by the end of the year. That's what we're working towards.
I have to wait that long.
Yeah, things are coming, but we've got multiple things happening at once. I guess we've got multiple plates spinning.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's not just one thing, and it's most definitely not like just a cute, pretty educational Instagram. That's like all you can see at the moment. But yeah, there's a lot more happening, and
so exciting.
We're working down.
Yeah,
definitely excited. More happening. Can you tell us what's in store for the future for Georgie Mankey?
For me, in terms of my career, or
or anything,
well, who knows?
in general, life, I'm not sure. No.
Does anyone know, really?
No, I honestly thought, I'd have it all figured out by now, but I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So
yeah.
No, there's so many things that I want to do, and that's why I've loved and stuck in nursing as opposed to working as a paramedic. I can see and I know that there's so much more opportunity and breadth within nursing than what I could ever foresee for myself within working as a paramedic. But there's so many things. I want to jump out of helicopters. I want to do rescue. I want to be like a flight intensive care nurse where we transport patients from like interstate and overseas. Like say someone has like a traumatic injury, in Spain and they have to fly back. Like I want to be on the flight with them doing those kind of things.
That's cool. I love that.
Yeah, I want to move to like a major ICU at some point. I want to do travel nursing. I want to become an educator. So do it all.
I feel like we have too much in common. Like forever striving, like perpetually, maybe not unsatisfied, but like always looking. I feel like I could live 100 lifetimes and be happy. Like doing something different every time.
Yeah. And I'm sure like all of these things I've listed, I know that I'll achieve them at some stage. I'm not in like a rush, so to speak, but I can definitely see myself moving throughout all of those roles at some stage, whether it's when I'm like 70 and still nursing or what. But this is just like the tip of the iceberg was me getting into ICU and starting my postgraduate studies, and the world really is my oyster, which makes me so excited.
So cool.
I feel like I'm surrounded by all these young nurses who have these big dreams, and I've missed that. I suppose I haven't missed that boat, but now I'm like married, middle-aged with a kid in a management role in a country hospital, and like
but your priorities change as you change, and you never know. Like if Amelia moves out one day, you might turn around and go, you know what, Cam, I've always wanted to try this, we're moving, and then that'd be it. You just don't know.
I know. I suppose I spent my 20s nursing all over Western Australia, in the country, and living my best single drunk 20s life. And then I hit 30 and met Cam and got married, and that was it. So, but yeah, I love that everyone has these big dreams, and in nursing, it's a reality to achieve them because, nursing is just the most amazing profession where you can be, you can do whatever you want and climb as high as you want or stay as low as you want. And I don't mean that in any disrespect or anything. I just mean that if you just want to nurse, you can just nurse. Yeah. And if you want to, be a flight nurse on international, retrieval operations, then you can go and do that. Like there's nothing stopping you, and there's nothing stopping you from becoming the, director of nursing at a big hospital or, I don't know why you'd want to now that I'm in a management. There's a lot of meetings. Not
much time for working. Just a lot of time for meetings. The work needs to be done.
Oh, the meetings. Anyway.
look what you're doing with your podcast, though. You know, you said that you're in a marriage, you're married, you've got a kid, but what you guys are doing with your podcast is amazing. And I was listening to one of your episodes recently. You guys are leveling up, you're growing, you're expanding, you're taking steps to move to the next level. So that's not something to be, I guess, ignored. You're doing great things.
Yeah, Kelly fucking booked me up for 3 nights this week to record.
One of them's for dinner, mate.
No,
one of them's not recording.
I forgot we're going out for dinner for Kelly's birthday.
Yeah.
Anyway.
We don't
that's funny. Yeah.
We've got some word association for you, Georgie, because we're starting that with our guests now. We thought it would be a bit of fun.
Oh my
I just read the words and I'm like, wow. Alicia picks the words, not me. So.
Well, anyway. Okay, you ready?
Right. Wait, like so do I just say the first thing that comes to my head?
Yeah, the first thing that comes into your head. Word association.
Georgie.
Okay, are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Green.
Whistle.
Gag.
Ooh.
Sputum.
Posterior.
It makes me think I'm glad the patient's not prone.
Mushroom.
They're on their back. Mushroom? What kind?
Hair.
Hair?
Yeah.
Oh, you got to braid it, girl. Got to braid it.
Finger.
Don't put it in the patient's mouth.
Shock.
Oh my God, press the right button. I once turned the defib off instead of pressing shock. Oh my God.
That's a teachable moment.
This is like, you know that show Taxi Cab Confessions? This is like nursing confessions.
That's funny. Oh my God.
Can you tell us about that, please? I have so many questions.
Yeah. Oh, thank goodness it wasn't in a real situation. It was in a mock code.
Oh, still.
God, the daggers. No, I got back to the break and the educators were like, there's a code in bed 1, like go and have a look. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to go and have a look. And it took me so long to realize that it wasn't a real patient because like everyone was treating it as a real code. Like the monitor was just playing like, you know, an arrest rhythm. There was all the consultants in there. Someone was giving CPR and I was like, what? And I walked in and they were like, Georgie, we're so glad you're here. Can you be on the defib? And I went through the algorithm, the coached algorithm. And then when it came to press shock, I just turned it off. And like you could have heard a pin drop. Then, of course, I panicked.
And at what point did you realize it wasn't real?
It took me until I'd done like at least one round of coached until I was like, this isn't real. I was pretty new to ICU. I think I'd only just studied my advanced life support. So I was like, what is going on?
Great.
Oh, that's so funny. In the early 2000s, we used to have to do like fire drills in the hospital. We also used to do bomb threat drills until someone took it way too serious and like it was not ideal. I'm pretty sure that person has PTSD, but anyway. And I walked into a room because it was like they would call it out over the PA, you know, like fire and whatever. And I walk into the room and the nurses took it so seriously, the educators. They were so funny. They had drawings of flames like so they had cardboard cut out of flames on the curtains and like the person in the bed. And then as I walked past the curtain, a nurse just went poof with a cloud of talcum powder. She's like,
not the talcum powder.
I'm like, she's like, no, you fail. And I was like, what? She goes, you walk past the fire. And I was like, I was going to get that patient out. And she was like, nah, you fail. Next. Like, and I was just like, what the fuck was this? Like,
That is so funny. You're like, meanwhile,
The
having
shit
an
you could
asthma
get
attack.
away with in the 20 years ago. Yeah, I know. No one knew talcum powder was carcinogenic back then.
Oh my God, I was going to say that. I was like, lol.
Yeah. Copped a bloody lung full of it. Oh my God. Righto. Suppose we
That
should
was my
wound this up.
favourite. That was the
Wind this
best
up.
story. I think that almost tops Benny's story about the guy who cut off his own hand. I think
Chopped his
it made-
arm. Oh, God. At least it was just a practice run code and not an actual
Yes.
code.
That was
Yeah.
really fun.
Thank God.
You could see it happening in a panic. Like
Oh,
if you're like,
yeah.
oh, shit. Just
Yeah,
flick
and
it off.
it makes that like wind up noise, and it's just like, oh my God, and then it beeps and
Yeah.
Press shock. And you're like, oh, turn it off.
No.
at least I didn't shock someone. Like at least I didn't deliver
Yeah.
the shock.
Yeah, that's right. Everyone's sitting on the bed. Yeah.
You forget to say stand back.
Yeah,
What is
all
it?
clear,
Stand clear.
everyone clear. Hands up.
I love that.
Well, as podcasters, we understand the power of words, even if I stumble over them all the time.
Yeah.
Thanks for the chat today, Georgie. It was actually very funny. I really enjoyed it.
You know how
You
we
can
were saying at the start,
find
we didn't know how
Georgie-
this was going to go?
Yeah.
I feel like it went to the perfect place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can find Georgie on Instagram at Georgie Mankey, and the links will be in the show notes.
And if you could all use your words and write us a review for our podcast and rate us 5 stars, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Give us a follow on Instagram.
I'll give you a structure if you want. When I listen to the Too Humorous Nurse podcast, it makes me feel empowered. I really like it. You should listen to. Is that clear?
I really like it. Yeah.
and then silence.
I feel like
Silence.
And then mic
I
drop.
feel like your adjectives need a bit of work. Thanks, Georgie. I feel like fucking fabulous should have featured in there.
I really like it. Can you leave that review, please?
Keep an eye out. Coming for you soon.
You can follow us on Instagram at Two Humorous Nurses Podcast or send us an email. We love reading everyone's stories. Our new email is hello@twohumorousnurses.com. That's humorous like the bone, HUMERUS.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.